whether you've been in the field for 20 years or starting out, be open to the field and the community of photographers. Like, it's really easy especially if you work for a big brand and you get contracts to come in, do your job and go away. But I think one of the beauties of, endurance sport and people involved in it is the community. And I would really encourage people to take time to look beyond your job as a creative to connect personally. Because I think you in the end, you create really great friendships out of it and connections.
Hello, and welcome to Run of Show, a podcast about the creatives in the running industry. In this episode, I chat with Luke O'Shea. I met Luke at Broken Arrow this year. I was immediately impressed by the way Luke tells stories. This conversation was one of my favorites, so enjoy. Cool, well, thanks for joining me, man.
Good to be here. It's sort of like the I guess the pause before the storm of Western States and after Broken Arrow and after TrailCon, it's like these 2 days where everyone sort of takes a breath. So it's kind of nice. It's nice to be in a nice little bit of forest. Yeah,
I know. Thank you for joining me in this random little spot we found on these rocks, but it's kind of fun and quirky, and we need more. I thought that was a coyote down there. It's just a dog. We need more quiet spots in the village to do podcasting, but for now, this works great. So we just got through 3 days of Broken Arrow, 2 days of TrailCon. Lots going on here. So thank you for joining me, because I'm sure you're also getting tired. And you have a big weekend ahead of you. So I'd like to start this with a little bit about how you describe yourself and your work. I know you obviously as a photographer and you do run, but why don't you tell me in your own words, how do you talk to people about what you do?
That's great. I think my background is I guess from a brand and marketing background. I spent 20 years with sports brands working in product development, branding, marketing, and strategy. And probably the last 4 or 5 years of that, I really lent into the creative side. I was lucky enough to work with a brand that really probably paved the way for the way creative and content formed a valuable pillar of their overall strategy in Rapha.
Wow, okay.
And I worked for them. I was based in Hong Kong, and during the sort of rise of that brand and the way that content and creative and storytelling really came into, it was pivotal in building that brand. And I think that really opened my own eyes into my own creative process and the stories I like to tell, and the way that sports was traditionally told was quite commercial. I think, a lot of the sports, or definitely the categories that I've worked in, were very wholesale channel that wasn't very direct, and it was all about point of sale and, use an athlete, stick a picture up, and that was it. And Rapha sort of turned that on its head, especially in the cycling industry, in the way that it went direct and told, sort of brought to life this romanticism of cycling and the suffering of cycling. And I was like, that really appealed to me from an aesthetic standpoint. And, ever since then, working for them, I've developed my own, it's a never growing thing, my own aesthetic and approach, and tried to bring it to different sports that I felt had an opportunity to do great storytelling, especially in the endurance part. And try to bring this, I don't want to say non-commercial, because, we're all here to try and make a living, but try to bring richer stories and a different viewpoint to, whether it be trail running, whether it be triathlon, whether it be, women's soccer or football, or any sports, and just, bring to life a little bit more the people that are in it, rather than your stock standard. And it's a challenge because, as you know, a lot of brands like the commercial shots. That's what you get paid for. Especially if you're, shooting a football team with sponsors, logos and things like that. But I am seeing a lot more brands really be open to that storytelling aspect and, more, I guess, abstract or conceptual visuals. And, that gives me confidence to keep developing my own style and, sort of taking inspiration from outside of sports and trying to bring that in as well. So, yeah.
Very cool. So what's your relationship with sport? Were you ever, growing up, were you ever in sports? How did you get interested in telling those stories?
Being an Aussie, we are fueled by sports. We are driven by sports. Our whole national identity is pretty much fueled around sport. So I was your classic, I wouldn't say classic, I was a semi-classic Australian. During summer I played cricket, which is a very foreign sport for you North American people. Yeah. And then during winter I played soccer, we call it football. So, that's traditionally how I grew up. And then once I went to university, I started to get into running a bit more. Mm-hmm. I was always drawn to the fitness side of cricket and soccer. Mm-hmm. And, as you sort of get into, university and other aspects take over your life, you go, well, I don't have time for team sports, so I want to do individual sports, and, started running, traveling. Running was really easy. You just packed your running shoes and that was it. And then eventually when I finished my first, world tour of traveling and backpacking, I got into triathlon. I worked for ASICS, the footwear company, and we sponsored a lot of triathlons. So I thought I'd get into that and really loved it. And then got into cycling after that, obviously with Rapha, and was always, loved running. Did a couple of longer trail runs when I was at ASICS, and just drawn to that endurance sport. I think as you get a little bit older, you spend a lot more time by yourself, and endurance sports is a nice way to sort of still keep fit and you've got those long hours on the trail or on the bike by yourself, and you sort of go, well, I'm still being active and doing that. So still trying to keep active, but as work, every time I seem to enter an event back in Australia, they approach me to shoot the event, and I'm never going to say no to work. So I end up going, well, okay, I can still train, but I won't do the event. So it's kind of nice. So
Okay, cool. So you've been on the brand side for a while. Yeah. What was that impetus for you to go on your own?
I think it was, as I said before, like the last sort of 2 or 3 years of, where I was, a CMO or a marketing director, I really leant into the creative side. Not that I didn't love the strategic side and working with, setting a 5-year, 10-year strategy. It was more like it really, I don't know, like I loved being on shoots. I loved working with athletes and telling stories. And, I eventually kept taking my camera along to shoots. Mm-hmm. I was lucky enough that the photographers or videographers that we hired weren't too precious that I had the camera out. Like, they probably weren't going to ever say no to the CMO, having the camera out. And I think, after I left my last sort of full-time permanent role, I thought, well, it's now or never. I want to scratch that itch of really leaning into it and going freelance. I still do some freelance strategy consultancy work because it's nice to keep my toe in that water, and it also gives me the freedom to come over here for a month because I can pick and choose what photography I do, and I can work for myself. So, and I just really felt like I really wanted to develop that side of my storytelling. And there's so many great photographers and videographers out there that you look what they're doing and like you get inspired by it and you want to do the same work or do, like sort of elevate your own work. And I think that just, I don't know, like I started shooting my friends that were in trail running or triathlon, and, they kept egging me on that I should do it more often. And, when you know the person, it's kind of cool to shoot a different angle of them or a different aspect that they don't see. And again, having been in the sport, I think you've got a bit of an advantage. You sort of know what the athlete's going through, and when you shoot a friend, it's got that nice personal touch to it as well. So, and I love the creative side. I think it's just that you never stop learning, do you? You always new people come into the field. New people start to shoot, say, trail running, and it's just like, wow, they changed the game, or I didn't see it like that. And it's kind of nice to see the ever-evolving landscape of content and media and go, well, shit, I need to up my game here because, things are changing. You can't just push out the same content. And I think that sort of excites me because it's probably the athlete side where you just got to continuously evolve as an athlete. You've got to continuously evolve as a creative as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like I've been feeling that too with so many wonderful photographers coming into our realm. You all are pushing out so much great work, and it makes me want to strive for greater work as well. And it's very inspiring.
Yeah.
I think, at least on Instagram, from what I've seen in your work, you tell stories with every piece of what you can do with Instagram. The way you collage your photos, I think, is really interesting. And even in the written part of the post, you have sometimes poetry or just like a few words. Like, you're very thoughtful about everything you can do with Instagram. How do you think about these posts, what you're doing, how you storytell via social media, and how did you come to find this style?
Again, it's one of those things where it probably goes against the practice of instant social media and pushing things out as fast as you can. I think it takes time to become comfortable with that, right? Like, I think 2 years ago, I remember being at the finish line at Western States, and people were taking photos of crossing them and downloading to their phone and posting straight away. And I was like, wowzers, like, this is intense. Like, and it's just, again, I'm lucky the fact that either clients or athletes I've worked for, will take the time and will post later. And I'm comfortable with taking that time to, get something in the can. And I might sometimes post straight away, but very rarely I do, because I like to sit there and go, okay, what was I feeling? We're in this beautiful place of nature. What was I feeling, or what was the athlete feeling? And I feel like that, sometimes imagery can do it alone, but also, again, bringing the storytelling aspect of, the brands I've worked for, writing was part of that as well. And I think sometimes simple words can just add a little bit more oomph to it, or, some people connect with the imagery, some people connect with the words. And, sometimes I probably think way too much about it, as we all do. But it's also something that, again, for me, it probably, I don't want to say differentiates, but it also, it becomes my aesthetic, my style. It's like, the images are there, and sometimes I'll add, longer prose or, short sentences, because, that's what I feel accompany it. And as you said, like, that's what I like, I like to put that out, and people look forward to it, because, the not that I'm, sort of sitting there checking on comments or likes, but it's like when people say, oh, I love your written work as well. It's like, oh, okay, I've got this other arm that I can develop. And, I think it all goes hand in hand, because you read something, or you read a phrase or a quote by an athlete, and you're sort of visualizing what they're trying to do as well, and how you represent, what they've said in a pre-race interview. When you go to shoot them during a race, it's like, oh, does that match up, or something like that? So, yeah, it's another challenge. And I think, sometimes, again, like all creatives, I sit there and mull over images, and I mull over words, and I'll come back to it 2 days later, and it's like, oh, actually, I don't need to change this. I'll just post it out. So, and it's good fun. And again, it's another challenge, and, it's just all evolving my skill set, I guess, as well.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I find that challenge of posting right away to try to go viral, or to try to meet the moment, with, someone finishes Western States and everyone wants to know what happened. And so do you fight that instinct to just post right away to try to get that early fame, or that, event, what's the word I'm trying to think of, current, people looking, or do you take the time to do something a little bit more creative? Yeah. And it's hard. It's a challenging thing, because I mean, it's so easy to fall prey to that, because you're like, this awesome thing just happened. I want to be the first person to tell the world about it. Yeah. And in reality, there's 18 other people who are doing it. And something I found too is I've struggled with this exact concept, and there's almost always someone who can post faster than me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, sometimes things go viral when it's just an iPhone video. Yeah. And an iPhone video or an iPhone photo is going to go up to social media way quicker than I can take a nice photo from my camera, do a quick edit, and send it up. Yeah. So there'll always be someone quicker than me. Virality, it doesn't come from just a high quality camera. Yeah. And so those things I don't find I want to chase anymore. Yeah. And so I really value the fact that you do take some time to actually think. And when you post, it's not something someone's seen yet. Even if it is whoever finishes Western States first, even if it is photos of them and a story about them finishing Western States first, it is creatively assembled in a way that no one has done yet.
Yeah, and again, it probably goes against all the commercial realities of the world we operate in. But again, I think you've got to be, and it's been great this week because I've met some new people that are new to shooting the sport and they're developing their careers, and you forget that, even though I've probably only been shooting for 7 or 8 years, I've been around sport and marketing and brand for 20 plus years. So you sort of forget what you know.
Yeah.
And as you get older, naturally you get more comfortable with what you're doing, and sort of chatting to them, and you go, oh wow, like I have come a long way, and I am comfortable with taking that time. And I'm sure there's times, I've definitely worked at events with brands where they want it straight away, which is fine. Yeah. Which is, but it's probably not what I'm going to post later on. Right. And you've got to balance that, right? Because when you're employed by a brand to follow athletes during an event, they want it. They want updates on their athletes straight away, which is fine. You can still do that, but it's taking that time post event to go, you know what, people appreciate what I do later on. It's not going to be, it might be 2 weeks after Western States, but people just go, oh wow, this is kind of nice. And I think that's, when you're in the bubble of, and it's really hard, right? Because, for the last week and a half, we were in the bubble of trail running. So with the world revolves around trail running as far as we're concerned, but it's a really niche sport still. And it's really funny when you see, I will get immediate reactions from trail running people when I post, something about Western States. I go, great. But majority of people that follow me will probably like it 2 weeks later and go, oh, I really love this story. And I think that's something that I've tried to work on, is like, and it's probably something that a framework that I look at, or a lens that I look at through. It's like, is my story going to resonate with people outside of trail running because of, as you said, the aesthetic, the assembly? Because in the end, that's going to grow the sport. It's going to grow me, because otherwise I'm just sort of talking to the same people. And it's something that, at Rapha, we really harped on that. When we'd put a piece of creative out, we didn't really assess it against cycling creative. We assessed it against creative. If this stood out in, say, music, or, like if it got like resonance in not mainstream media, but if it got awards in design magazines or anything, or we thought, okay, that's what we're doing, something right. Because your sport is so niche and so small that, you might go viral in that sport, but it's like, well, is that growing the sport, or are you just talking to the same people? Yeah. And I think that's what I always come back to, is like, if people engage with my, or, posts or contact me that aren't really involved in trail running, I'm like, well, this is kind of cool, because they appreciate that. They go, oh, this is a great story. I don't know, I don't have a clue who this athlete is, but I love the imagery and I love the words. And like, and they might all of a sudden delve into the rabbit hole of Western States and understand that. And I think that's what, when I think about it, that's what probably got me into the world of, trail running. Is I remember Salomon put out these series of videos with Killian of slow-mo of him running down like these gravel. I was like, wow, this is a cool video, like from a brand and product standpoint. And it's like, oh, this guy Killian and this like trail running. It's like, because, in Australia, it probably wasn't even really taking off yet. And that's what got me into the sport, was the actual creative to start with, because I looked at it from a creative angle, not the being involved in the sport.
Very cool. Yeah. So you've told stories in lots of different sports. Yeah. Do you find the stories change between sports, or is it all kind of human stories?
They definitely change. I think, endurance sport is very different to say, women's football, or to shorter sports. I think there's always fundamental currents that run through. Like, athletes always go through the same ups and downs, like injury, doubts, preparation, the actual event. I think it's definitely, and it also depends where the sport's at. We've just had 2 days of trail con and great discussions around the state of trail running, and I think it's a real interesting aspect. The athletes might not notice it because they're so, self-focused, and it's great. But the sport as a whole is changing quite rapidly. And I think that will have an impact on the stories that come out of it from an athlete perspective, the role that they play, how they have to approach media in the future. But then, say, shooting women's football in Australia post the World Cup, we had this huge growth of people following women's football because of the success of our national team and just the fact it was held there, and all these new people came to the sport. So all of a sudden, these girls, women that have been, playing this sport for 10 years became front and center. So the stories of them that were untold were great, but that is a physical sport that I played it when I was younger, and I was I remember the first night I went to Sydney FC training, and I was like, there is no way I'm getting on the field with these girls. They were I was like, wow, this is a tough sport, and it's very physical. So, there's a lot more, I guess, sort of differences in the sports because, injuries, so to speak, with endurance sport, it's sort of that overuse injury, whereas there's a lot more really dramatic injuries in, say, a contact sport. And so, but, I think fundamentally, there is quite the same narratives. It's just the way that you tell them, and sort of they're more dramatic in some sports than others. So,
yeah. I feel like the US is going through this a little bit with women's basketball right now, with the popularity of Kate and Clark kind of coming up, and SF just got a new team, Valkyries. So it's exciting time for that as well for us. Cool. So I also want to talk to you a little bit about your creative process. And we've touched about it a little bit, but can you tell me a little bit about what your creative process is now and also how it's grown over the years?
Yeah, I think, I remember, as I said, I think the first trail run event I shot, I was actually crewing for a friend, and I just took my camera and I just took shots. And I've always had a bit of a different eye than, I didn't really want to take the stock standard race photo that you got from, say, Sportograph or something like that, because, if I'm going to spend time out there with a camera, I want to take something different. And again, it's a balance. If I'm, for Broken Arrow, I had the beauty of being a bit more free. So I could sort of walk around and shoot different angles and experiment. And having been here before, I sort of knew the course. So it was kind of, advantage of where I wasn't going to go and where I was going to go. But I really like to look at different angles. And I definitely take inspiration from outside the world of sport when it comes to using light, street photographers or cinematographers, and the way that they, utilize light to really, showcase bodies and faces. It's not always the easiest when you're shooting an event that's open and it's 12 o'clock and you're like, how am I going to get some shadow here? But it's probably something that I really like to look at is shadow. And you don't always get the shot because it's dark or it's light, but I'll spend some time in a location and go, walk around and look at the different light and go, okay, well, and again, it's balance. If I'm shooting for a client, I'm probably going to get the safe shot first and go, cool, I've got that. That's in the can. Now I can experiment a little bit more. But even with the safe shot, I usually find that I'll give that to the client and then they'll want the other shots anyway because they're like, oh, these are pretty cool.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about light, and it's photography is capturing light in it. But I really like to use shadows and really like to, because I feel like that really, especially in something like a Western States, if an athlete's deep into the race, it adds that dramatic effect, and really going, oh, you only see half their face. So because they're so in it, and I think that's what I always look for. You don't always get it because of they might be out in the open and it's not easy, but I will shoot, and I will shoot a lot. That's the advantage of digital. And I always shoot too much, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but and I probably won't, and I don't know if this is good or bad, I probably won't review on the day. I will just shoot and give myself a little bit more, I will definitely shoot an angle and go, that's not, look at it and go, it's not working, or try to shoot it again, but I won't really review deeply until, it depends if a client wants it, but probably not till the next day or day after. Because I find that also like, if I do, and I'll probably do it 2 or 3 times because, like there's shots that, appeal to you straight away. There's other shots that might be, you look at them later on. So I'll initially go through and, say if I'm working for a client, I'll say select 30 shots. And then I'll probably select 30 others that I go, this might push their boundaries a little bit, but I'll include them. And then like any good creative, I'll probably go back to it a week later and go, well, what does my selection look like?
Yeah.
And yeah, I've got, I've got an aesthetic, a tone or a feel that I probably want to present even before the race, because I feel like that adds to it. Like, it's hot or it's dusty and, or it might be raining cold. I definitely go through black and white phases. I love black and white.
Definitely.
That's just, I feel like you sort of go, oh, wow, like this shot, and not everyone loves that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll review it. And then, a week later, I'll probably look at, my own sort of selection. And as you said before, I'll probably start to put together 30 or 40 shots. And then in my head, I'll start to developing a narrative. So words, and go, cool, what am I feeling or what was I feeling out there? And it might be as simple as just writing words down like during there. And I've started to actually use voice notes as well. I think that's super cool in the moment. And one thing, not to let my secrets out.
But please, this is what we're for.
But one thing I was thinking about doing for Western States is because, we've got a very confined area and everyone's going to be there and it's shooting it, is like really trying to use, maybe I'll use record, like when athletes come into aid stations, you're taking a lot of shots, but actually put the voice recorder on to record the interaction between the athlete and the crew, because that, like, you have a still image, but imagine like the voice over, it's like you're going, okay, it's like bang, but you've got this one still image. So I think that could be kind of a cool concept to look at. I don't know how I'll do it. I'll probably leave my phone on the floor and it'll get trampled. But I might do that because I think that, that sound element adds to it as well. So, but yeah, back to the creative process, and then I've always got a bit of a shot in mind, and then, I think we're always, Sarah asked me the other day, she go, oh, are you happy with your shots? And unfortunately, I'm probably never happy. Like all of us are. We always we always look at other people's shots and go, shit, I missed out on that. Like, Broken Arrow, I got off the mountain just before it was snowing and I was like, oh, great, I'm safe. And I'm like, and then I looked at Em's photo, I was like, oh, damn it, I wish I was still up there. But, and I think that's just part of reviewing. Like, as a creative, you're progressing and you're ever evolving. So that self-evaluation and going, I didn't quite get this angle right or how I tried it. I think it's important to do that. And then, I will post and then archive, like anyone, that runs out of room on their laptop. You've got to archive pretty much straight away. So,
Yeah, it's interesting. I also felt like I was down in the village when it was snowing and I was like, damn, I wish I was up there. I was like, that sounds so cool to be up there in the snow.
So cool. It's like, I would have added a completely different element to it. But, that's, you can't be everywhere. And I think you've got to get comfortable with that as well. Like, there's times when you commit to a space and you don't get the shot, but that's the reality we live in. Like, I think that's the beauty of constraints of like working on a course or working within a realm. Like, having shot football where you're only allowed on the sideline, it doesn't give you a huge flex. So you have to become creative. And I think, that's one thing I'd really encourage people, because we are pretty spoiled when it comes to trail running or endurance events when you've got an environment like this and weather to work with. I'd really encourage people that, shoot these sports is to shoot other sports that have constraints, because I think that really evolves your creativity and your skill set, because you have to start to think differently. And I think that's something that I've aimed to do is, I started shooting triathlon and trail running and going, I could probably survive doing this. But I'm like, ooh, like you shoot the same events and you sort of get a little bit, not jaded, but you just keep cranking out the same stuff. And you're like, okay, well, what can I shoot that challenges me, that then I can bring that skill set back to the traditional sports that I'm involved in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think it's tough sometimes to be okay with what you got.
Yeah.
And appreciate what you got, and you got good shots.
Yeah.
And then also see other people and like, they got good shots. And like, that's a great shot. I would love to have it, but you know, I got these, they get them. That's like part of it. You know, we can't always get everything. And it's also, you know, everyone's got their own way they see the world. And I think it's interesting, and trying to use that as fuel for creativity, for your own creativity, versus letting it bum you out kind of thing, you know, is definitely a hard balance sometimes, especially if you're new, or if you've been around for a while and you feel like you should be better, it can be challenging. You know? Very cool. Well, I also want to segue into a little bit of your business. So you're a freelancer now. I don't know how things work in Australia, but you know, here we're like LLCs or sole proprietors, or we're freelancers. And you know, we contract with clients. Is it similar?
Yeah, same.
Okay.
You can you can create your own business. You've got an we call it an Australian business number. You're a sole proprietor. You invoice. Most events will contract you through that, or a brand will contract you through that. There are agencies that you can go through. Australia is obviously a much smaller market than the US, population-wise, and you know it's a very, you know, especially endurance event, it's dominated by certain corporations. So, you know, it is really tough. It is a hustle in Australia because you just don't have the, you know, there's some really great photographers there that have great, and deservedly so, they have contracts with those companies, and they just crank it out year on year. They're doing the same stuff, and that's great because they deserve it. And they're, you know, that's what initially inspired me to get into it, as those people. But it's really hard to crack that. And you have to, you know, and again, Australia is, you know, I'm not sort of hating on it because it's very lucky to be born and bred there. It is a long way away from brands. It's a long way away from your European brands and North American brands. And, you know, having been involved in that brand side, I think probably 15, 16 years ago, a lot of brands were investing money in that. But I feel like, especially, you know, post-COVID, a lot of brands, global brands, are consolidating where they shoot and where they create content. You know, I've been very lucky in the last couple of years working with global brands to produce content in Australia and New Zealand, but it's very rare. They'll use global content to promote their product, mainly because also it does appeal to that market. We don't, you know, there was a big push for global and local content, but, you know, a film of, say, Jim through Hoka, most people in trail running in Australia are going to know Jim, so they don't need to do a local athlete. So the opportunities are pretty slim there. That's why I tend to come to Europe and the US, is to connect with brands and you know, again, push myself when it comes to a different environment, see what you guys are doing, connect with you guys. But it works the same. You're hustling. You're trying to build your business. You're trying to promote yourself. You're trying to do your admin of your business and shoot at the same time. And, you know, it's people go, oh, it must be great. It's like, oh, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's very stressful. But again, the freedom it gives me compared to a corporate job, I wouldn't change it for the world. Yeah.
So coming from the brand side now, you must know a little bit better what brands are looking for, also how to work with them. You know, how do you go about a client interaction? You could say, what's that process look like?
Yeah, it definitely, I feel like it definitely, when I started, it definitely gave me an advantage. I feel like most creatives are getting better at it. And I think you mentioned it yesterday during the Trail Con, is there's a real, and, you know, thankfully I did do this when I was in, you know, sort of CMO or head of creative roles. I would bring creative people in very early on, especially if they're external, because I'd usually hire them because of the previous work they'd done. And I wanted them to bring that aesthetic to the brand. And again, it's something that Rapha did very well. They would hire photographers because of the way that they presented the sport. And they became, you know, Rapha's look and feel became very reliant on 3 or 4 photographers. And, you know, that developed the aesthetic of the brand. And I think they were involved in the community because it gave this sort of authenticity feel to it. So I like to think that I can go to a brand and really sort of cut to the chase about, you know, either you have the discussion about what creatively do you want me to bring to it, or if they've got a look and feel, what do you want me to execute? Because I feel like sometimes you can get really caught in the middle. And brands sometimes they go, oh, we just love what you do, but
just do your thing.
Just do your thing. And you're like, oh, that's pretty unclear. Like it's a really broad brief and I appreciate it, but it's like, oh my God, I'm stressed out, Max. So I like to really refine that brief and get really clear on it, because I think it sort of comes from the consultancy work I do, working with founders, is asking those questions, because sometimes they're not clear. They have an idea, but until you really have that conversation going, what's the end result? What do you want? What's the story you want to tell? They haven't really thought about it. They go, oh, we just want to do a campaign for this new product. It's like, great, awesome. But, so there's a lot of questions I think that I can ask that, probably normal, if you've just been brought up in the creative realm, you probably don't ask. But, your creatives are only as good as the brief. And I think that's what it comes back to. And I think if it's very unclear for me, that's where I'll delve into that side and spend time with the client and go, let's really nail this down. So then we can, not only save time and save you guys money, but actually produce the result that I'm happy with and you're happy with as well. And it takes a little bit more time, and sometimes I'll get approached by clients and go, oh, you're free this weekend, and it might be Friday, and you're like, oof, okay, this is going to be tough, but and then you just got to try and use your experience, right? You go, well, okay, this is what the brand is. I'll look at their other stuff and go, cool. And I don't want to say play it safe. Like, I'm always going to shoot stuff that's sort of outside of the brief, because I'll find that they'll go, oh, we'll just include a couple of these shots to us. And it's, that's the beauty of it, right? When you've got your own aesthetic or take on things sometimes, and that could lead to future work. As I said, I've been very lucky to connect with Adidas a couple of times and shoot some Terex athletes, and they've got confidence in what I do now. And they've got a very strong aesthetic.
They do. Yes.
And it's great because you get that brief and you go, cool. And you can
I know what you want.
They know what you want, and you can nail it, but also they appreciate when you do your own stuff as well. They go, oh, I really like this. So, and it's very surprising for a big brand like that to do that. And they give you that flexibility, which is great because you can tell the story in your own way as well. I think it's challenging, and I think more brands are getting to the stage where they're hiring creatives to add something to their brand, which is exciting for us, because it means that we just won't be pushing out the same stuff. And they're looking for creatives to become, part of their brand, not so much be an in-house employee, but be an extension of their brand, because most of the time we are involved in the community and we've got this, I don't want to say legitimacy, but we are, we're on the ground, we're doing the hard yards, and we're not someone that's just flown in from a corporate and taking photos. And I think brands really appreciate that when they're trying to build community and, come into a new sport or enter it. They look for people that are already in that community to execute for them.
Yeah. I feel like you covered this, but in your experience, an ideal brand or client interaction is? I've definitely, again, been on both sides. I've seen some really good and bad client interactions. I've worked with, and again, it comes, I've worked with a couple of Korean and Japanese brands where language becomes a huge barrier because you might think it's clear, but it's just not coming across. So I think that the ideal interaction, I think, would be getting involved as a creative really early on. It's not always the case because, sometimes it's a social campaign, they need it straight away, or it's an event. But really early on, the earlier you can get that creative involved, the better, because they become and it might not be a job for them. You might identify early on that you go, very rarely we're going to turn down a job, but you might be sitting there going, this is not for me. And it takes guts to say that early on, but there have been jobs where I'm sitting there going, I can recommend someone else for you, but it's not for me because the direction they're going is not what I do. And it's hard because, that person that they might hire, they might keep on for 10 years. And you're like, shit, I missed a boat there. But it's hard because I also, and I think this is,
when you're a creative, you've got to know where your skill set is.
Yeah.
Which isn't easy as well, because I know very early on I said yes to a lot of work that I wasn't capable of executing.
Yeah.
And I guess that's confidence again, knowing what you can execute. And you know, until you can, have confidence in, developing those skills. And that's why I said shoot different sports, because it allows you to do that. But yeah, sitting down with the client, understanding the real needs and the story they want to tell, really like drumming that out. I always like to reverse brief as a creative. So I'll put together a mood board, look and feel, like really key shots. And, they might have one, but I'll put one together as well, what I'm thinking. And then you sort of just meld those two together. If you're working with a big brand, there's always going to be a creative director. Whereas smaller brands, it's probably coming from either the CEO or the marketing person. And they're like, well, here's the brief, and it might be a one-page Word document. And you're like, oh, wow, okay. And I like to give that because it gives them a further understanding of exactly what they're going to get.
Yeah.
And, you're going into it, especially if you're doing a campaign shoot, like I've done shoots where you're away for 4 or 5 days and the expectations are pretty high. And you've got to nail it. And if you're working with athletes, the last thing an athlete wants to do is do a reshoot. Like, I just run once more up and down this hill. And I've been very fortunate in most of the times we've done campaigns in sports brands. We've really tried to make sure that it's authentic. So the athletes have actually been training and we've just worked around them, because that's also added a level of element. Like the athlete's happy because they don't have to do anything extra. I know that's not always the case, but it always adds a level of authenticity to the output. And yeah, I will go back and then, produce what I can. I probably always deliver more, as we always do, because we just love shooting, and that's what we'll deliver. I'll sit down with the client, and also if I feel like it's going to be a longer term client, I'll sit down and sort of look how they're going to utilise it. And I think also that gives me a bit of what you were saying before, having been on the other side and going, okay, you're using this for social, you're using this for web. It gives you a frame of how to frame the shot and the content, because you know where text is going to have to go. You know the space you're going to have to create around that, and which isn't always easy, because you could take the best shots, 20 shots for a campaign, but then they can't use them on a web banner or an advert because there's no space. So I'll sit down with the client post-shoot, go through the shots and going, okay, cool, were you happy? And like just be really honest with them and sort of like, cool, because again, if you're open with them and transparent, most of the time you're going to get return business. And they've got confidence in you because they've given you feedback as well. And then, yeah, I'll nearly always ask for, once they've done the creative, to send to me so I can look how they're using it. And just sort of go, okay, cool, this is not what I expected, or it was what I expected. I've got a client back in Australia that I initially started doing some brand work for them, like just some strategy work, and it's gone through to the creative side as well, because they were a small business, they didn't have the fundamentals, and it's been really interesting taking them on that journey and then educating them on how to brief a creative when I'm the creative, but I've been involved in the initial part as well, which has been good fun, but they see it and they're like learning so much, which is great, because you want brands to really understand that process, and the better they understand it, the better work we're going to produce as well.
Definitely. Wow, so much good information there working with brands. I feel like you don't really know when you're just first starting out as a photographer, you're excited, you're just making images, you're like sending them to everyone for free because you're just like, someone please use my images, and then you slowly develop these skills and like how to even interact with clients, how to charge, all this stuff. I was a software developer before a photographer, and I worked for a consultancy. So I had a little bit of that client interaction, at least just how to talk to a client and like get out of them a little bit what they are looking for, which I find is so helpful, but it's always a moving target. And
because, and it's again, when you're starting out, you don't want to know, it's like anything, you start a new job, you don't really want to say that you don't know.
Of course.
Like you're just sitting there and it's like you're sitting in a room full of people and you're like, I don't know what's going on here. Like I don't understand this. It's like, I'm not going to ask that question. I'm just going to go back to my desk and pretend I know what's going on and hopefully what I do is right. And I'm like, it's hard because and I guess, again, you get more comfortable with asking those questions and you're going like, guys, what do you really want here? And like sometimes I get blank faces going, we just said that. I'm like, well, you didn't really, but and sometimes I go, well, maybe I missed it, but repeat for me. And I think it's, as you said, it just takes a little bit of confidence to really reiterate. And sometimes if I'm doing a face-to-face meeting, I will then go back and type up an email going, just make sure we're on the same page and like bang, just so you've got it in written form going, this is what you're after, this is what you're doing. And I think, as you said, the temptation is when you're starting out is to, I can do that. I can do that. Yeah. You just say yes. Yeah. Because you're so scared of losing a client and you're like, especially when you get your first big one, I remember like, you're just like, I can do that. And then like, you get to the end of it and like, no one's happy. No one's happy. And you're like, oh God, like this is, and I've definitely been on the brand side where, luckily I've learned to like sit down and ask those questions. But, being a creative, I think you've got to have that, and just take, that ownership of it because in the end, it's your business that you're, presenting as well. And I think that's what you've got to be, as a freelancer, you're presenting yourself as a business, as a brand, and you've got to, it's a small world. Again, we were talking about it yesterday, like it's all relationships, it's all networking. And, if you're a very good, open, easy person to work with that produces good work, but it's very thorough, you're going to get hired more. Yeah. It's that simple. And that's it. Like people love working with you because you're thorough and you're good at your job. But you've got to ask those questions. Yeah. Nice. So how would you say this career change, you being a photographer, a storyteller, how has this changed you as a person? It definitely produced a lot more stress to start with. Not having a constant, and admittedly, I was 20 years into a marketing and brand campaign. I was a CMO. Like you get very comfortable, and it's really hard to, there's definitely luxuries that I've had to forego. People might not think it. I'm in the US for a month. They're like, oh, that guy lives the life. I'm like, yeah. It's a hustle, and I came over here with no jobs, and you hustle on the ground. And I think that it's definitely changed me in personality-wise from being, I think most creatives are probably introverted. I think we love being behind the camera for a reason. But when you're trying to build your own business, self-promotion, you have to be extroverted. And it's very uncomfortable for a lot of us. Like I'm not comfortable with it. And, you sort of, after 2 weeks of being in this, it's like, I just need 3 or 4 days by myself. I just need to chill out. So it's definitely, you realise there's certain aspects you have to do to survive and build your business. And they're uncomfortable, but I think it also has allowed me to grow as a person and your communication skills get better, your ability to connect with people gets better. I've come over here, I'm an Aussie. You guys are, all friends and I just have to infiltrate you. Yeah. It's just sort of like, but you do that in an authentic way. And I think you've just got to, I don't know, it's definitely changed me in that respect. Because I think when you're working in an office, you automatically have friends. You automatically have connections. As a freelancer, it's a very lonely world, a lot of time by yourself. So you've got to take those opportunities, connect, and it wasn't natural for me. So as a person, it's definitely changed me. I definitely see the world differently as my aesthetic changes, whether that be a romantic notion or something like that. But I think I take a lot more time. I love... not that I didn't love spending time in nature before, but I definitely don't take it for granted having worked in offices and cubicles for a long time. We've got one of the best offices and environments to work in. This is a spectacular place. And I think slowing down in this day and age is really hard. And I'm sure if you talk to yourself or to any others, you just go from job to job.
Yeah.
And you don't, having that ability to take that time out and go, you know what, I'm just going to go on a hike this afternoon for a couple of hours and maybe take the camera, maybe not, is a luxury. And it's definitely made me appreciate that a lot more, because not everyone gets to do that. Not everyone gets to work where we do. And, like I should be hustling and sending emails and following that up, but also you've got to take that opportunity if you're in spaces like this to take time out, because there will be a time when you work non-stop for 3 or 4 months and you're like, whoa, it's not always like that. So yeah, it's definitely makes me appreciate that a lot more, connect with people a lot more. And I guess, you're not in a rush. Like if you're sitting down and meeting someone for the first time, it's really just being present. I think we're really, not just creatives, but this day and age, we're always wanting to move to the next thing. And really sort of being present and having a conversation with someone that you just met or connected through someone. It's just like, yeah, I'm going to sit down and probably chat to you for 2 hours when normally I'd probably go, 10 minutes. I got to go.
Yeah.
And taking that time, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like, social media, interesting enough, plays a role in some of that distraction and not being present with people. And, I feel like your approach to not needing to do things in the moment maybe helps a little bit. Do you feel like social media, or what's your take on social media in general and its creative effect on you and on the industry and on photography?
It's like, I can't argue with it. Like I've got a lot of jobs through social media. I just, it's a platform for creatives to, get work out to new people. A lot of jobs come from word of mouth, which is great, but a lot of jobs come from people stumbling across or people sharing your Instagram. I feel like it's, especially on the brand side, it's definitely changed, even in the last couple of weeks. I think I don't pretend to try and keep up with that. It's crazy how that changes, and audiences and segmentation. I think no matter what platform you choose to promote your work on, I think the fundamentals of making sure that it's good work, being patient, and taking the time remain the same. Because something that you post about an event that's happening might get a little bit of a bump and you go, oh, that's great, I'll just keep doing that. But if it's really good work, people will come back to it. It's really hard to do in this day and age. But if you're producing good storytelling and good work, people will use that as a reference for future shoots. They'll go, I'm going to search this photographer because I love the work they did before. And it's like, bang, it becomes a reference. And they go, well, I'm just going to hire this photographer. And it doesn't matter what medium you're on, whether it's your website, your blog, social media. I think it's a great tool because it allows you to connect. Like it's allowed me to connect with you guys. It's allowed me to it breaks down barriers between athletes and brands and that. But the pace that it moves at also scares me because it changes so fast. Like I think, when I started, like social media was more of like, especially Instagram was just more of it was people posting holiday photos. It wasn't no brand was on it. It was just personal people. And then it's like, if, brands, like that's a content pillar, a content platform for them. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. I think we were talking about this before we started, like I'm a big fan of, I want to say long form video, but long form video this day and age is probably 5 minutes.
Seriously.
And I love the fact that I feel like YouTube has had this resurgence in the last like 5 or 6 years. And I will sit there and watch brand videos or, and I remember when Tracksmith released their hour-and-a-half video of a female running on a training run with no words. And I was like working for ASICS at the time and I thought, this is amazing. And I showed it to my bosses and they were like, no. I was just like, okay, so we're not going to do something like that. It's such a risk for a brand to do that.
Oh, totally.
Because, I don't know, like I guess creatives appreciate that. but Tracksmith, it suited their brand.
Yeah.
And I think that's another important thing to be really cognizant of is, as a creative, you can bring something to it, but really understand the brand values, fundamentals, and what they stand for, because you can go down a path and get it very wrong.
Totally.
But back to social media, I think it's exciting because it's ever evolving, but I don't know, like I feel as a small business owner and promoting your own business, it's like, is there going to be another way I have to promote my business? Is it like, it's like, wow, is that like, because, you need new business after a while. It's like, how do I get my word out there? How do I promote my business? It's like, again, it probably comes back to on the ground, like being here and hustling, because like, connecting with people, and it's like a couple of people that I've connected with, it's like, not everyone follows you. You're not that, it's a small world. And once they follow you, go, oh, like, I really like your work. It's like, great, but you've already connected. So I think that face-to-face connection is still valuable. I think social media, you've got to look at it as reinforcing what you're doing, which is hard because you can sit there and spend hours upon hours, which I probably do, curating and posting, and then you go, I didn't really get any work from that. And, you go have a 10-minute conversation at a coffee bar and you pick up a job. Or is it worth it? But it is, because it definitely, and I like it. Like, I think it allows me, a different arm and a different challenge. I don't know whether I'll delve into a different format like you have. That's, I know Substack is going through this resurgence again. Writing, and I'm like, oh, that just feels like a lot more work.
A lot of ways to add work to yourself.
Yeah,
for sure.
but that's the thing. I think you've got to evolve as a creative to different platforms that people are utilizing. And brands are probably starting to look for, unfortunately, it's no longer just able to do be one. You've got to be, not a jack of all trades, but you've got to bring something else to it. And that's, as human beings, even if you're in a corporate job, your job probably evolves and you've got to bring a different skill set to it. So I think that's you've got to remain wary of that you can't just go, this is what I am, and pigeonhole yourself. You've got to open yourselves up to, different opportunities, whether that's going into video, whether that's going into writing, whether that's going into something else, because that will open up opportunities as well.
Yeah, I find that definitely something I think about a lot. Like, does podcasting help? Does writing help? I'm on Substack as well. I think for me, it's all creativity. And I love to experiment with different things. And I've never been a writer or a good writer, I would say, but I love to write. I love to journal, all this stuff. And so I'm not going to try to monetize my Substack. A brand's not going to pay me for it, but I enjoy it. And I don't have to post every week. I find, I've tried to let go of that. Even with this podcast, I'm trying to just do 12. So I get one a month. I'm happy. And I think more important for me is to have these conversations with colleagues and to do them in person. I find that really awesome and such a just such a lethargic and fun way to connect with someone. And it doesn't need to be the most creative thing. I mean, just having a conversation, learning about someone's story is great.
Yeah, and I think you sort of nailed it there. Like, I think we're very quick to, unfortunately, and I think this is modern age has taught us, if something doesn't succeed within a week, we give up. And it doesn't always have to succeed. It could be just doing something for ourselves. It could be the fact that, you know what, I don't care if anyone reads my Substack. It's actually helping me develop as a person or a creative. And it's hard, right? Because it's time. And time is the one thing that we've got control over, how we spend our time. But again, for me, as I said, I might take time to go on a 2-hour hike and not think about something. But I know for me that refreshes me. And it's like, that's an investment I need to do. And it might be writing, it might be listening to music, it might be creating something on video. It's not going to be just because it might not be the greatest work. And I'm sure, if I look back at some of my first work, I'm like, whoa, what was I doing? It's just like, but you stick with it and you keep going and, that skill set develops over time. Not as like an athlete, none of us, very rarely just pop out and become great to start with. And I think you've got to be patient and you will learn new skills and what works for you and what doesn't. But if there's something that you love doing, and as you said, you don't have to monetize it, it might just be good for you.
Yeah.
And it allows you to then be better at other things that create, commercial opportunities for you.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about looking back on your work. Every now and then I'll look back at some of my work and you definitely have that feeling like I was terrible, but there's sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh shit, am I worse now? Yeah. I'm like, that's a good shot. I was good back then. Am I still got it?
Seriously, it's like, I was so simple back then. Yeah. I just nailed every shot.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe I'm overthinking it. And like, definitely, like, you get to a stage where you start to overthink, and I think it's good to reflect and go back on it and go, well, cool, what, and we've talked about it a bit, and a couple of people I've connected with, like 2 years ago, I took this shot at Western States, and it was out of both luck, but also actually looking at the amount of media that were behind the finish line and going, whoa, like that, the story I wanted to tell. And it's like the simplicity in that of just the moment going, you've just got to keep reminding yourself to go, you've got a viewpoint. Everyone's got a different viewpoint that we all appreciate. And I think you said it, like, you look at other people's photos and go, damn, I wish I'd got that shot. But that's their viewpoint. You might have been in the same spot, but you might not have seen that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes it so unique, is we're all individuals. Mm-hmm. And I think, you've got to appreciate where you've come from as well, but also look back on the stuff and going, well, what makes me is that viewpoint of, not everything is going to go viral or not everyone's going to like it, but that's me. Mm-hmm. And it's super hard because as a creative, doesn't matter what field you're in, the work you put out is pretty personal. Mm-hmm. Like, it's your viewpoint, it's your take on things that might not be what other people see, and you're putting it out into the world for criticism, and not everyone's going to like it. And it's tough to get over that, like, because in this day and age, you've got to promote your work, but then you open it up to criticism and open it up to other people's evaluation, and it's all subjective. Like, and I think you've got to have a tough exterior, because there's probably going to be more people that hate work than like it.
That's so true.
That's the reality. Yeah. It's like, unfortunately, that's it. Like, if you want to be front and center, like, that's like any artist, any creative you're going to have your naysayers, and you've just got to be, well, this is my viewpoint, and I like my viewpoint, and I feel like there's a story to tell through that viewpoint. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, a couple more questions before we wrap this up, but one thing I want to know is, what do you find easy and what do you find hard with this career?
Wow. What do I find easy? I feel like we get to work with some amazing athletes, and I feel like my job's, number one, very easy compared to what they're doing. Like, running 100 miles through this terrain is not easy. The amount of hours they put into it, not saying that we don't put hours in, but, it's physical. And I feel like sometimes I have to pinch myself when I'm shooting an athlete. It doesn't matter what they're doing. I'm like, they just are amazing people. And it makes my job very easy. Like, all I have to do is be in the right angle, use the light, and it's like, boom, got a great photo. I find that, like, I'm in awe of athletes and what they do, especially endurance athletes, the dedication that they have. Like, it's not, again, unless you're one of the top 5 or 6, it's a very unfulfilling commercially career. Like, it is a lot of hours for, 10 years? And then you, like, might get 2 or 3 years where you're at the top of the sport. Like, it's unforgiving. So the stories are there, and I don't really have to pull them out that much. And luckily enough, athletes are getting much better at being open about telling those sport stories. So I feel like that's very easy. Like, if I approaching an athlete and they know my work, like, it's just bang. All I have to do is get the shots, tell a story. What I find hard is I don't know, like, it's probably keeping up with you guys. Like, I feel like, I look at the work that, this group that's here and people outside of it that are doing, and bringing that. And it's not so much like, I want to execute that shot. It's just like that. You've got to evolve your viewpoint. And as you said, like, you come to the same event. Do you get tired of coming to the same event? I was like, well, there's different athletes, there's different stories to tell, but you're always trying to look for a different angle to tell that story. And it's not always the case, right? Because it could be exactly the same conditions and you're like, oh, I just got the same shot. It might be a different, but it's like, it's keeping up with you guys and using you guys as inspiration. You know, not only the group that's been here for the last week, but, you know, look at the, you know, a couple of the people that come in through Hoka and Salomon who sort of probably have more experience outside of trail and going, cool, how do I continually evolve or find the time to develop my skill set that allows me to bring more creativity or concepts or, you know, sort of that elements to it, to a sport that might be changing, but again, they're running the same course that they've done for the last 30 years. I find that that's the challenge and finding the time to really sit down and hone that in, because again, if you go from job to job, you feel like you're growing, but you've got to take that time out. It's like an athlete. Like at the end of a season, they might sit down and go, what worked, what didn't, what do I need to change? And I think we've got to do that as creatives as well. You look at your season and go, well, I had success here commercially, but am I developing as an artist? And I think that's tough to sit down and create the space and time to do that. And I think, you know, as I said, like using you guys as inspiration, like when I'm back in Australia and looking at the work you guys push out and I'm like, oh, wow, they're doing that. And finding there's not always an event on and finding the opportunities to go out and do that. And it's hard because, it's time again.
Yeah, I feel like maybe a lot of us have a similar sympathy. Like we all feel like we're either falling behind or, you know, trying to keep up with the creativity that all of us are pushing out because we're, you know, everyone's so talented.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so final question here is, you know, who or what inspires you?
I was thinking about this on the way here because I knew you'd ask me. I think what inspires me, and I think that there's twofold. There's the external inspiration that I have through references, and like I've been delving into a lot of street photography, a lot of, and not so much taking it myself, but the way that they use shadow and light, like your classic Soul Litter and things like that. The guys are just classic photographers. It's like, wow, like, because they're not setting up a scene. They're just walking around taking photos and using light really amazing. And then delving into the world of cinematography and how, you know, looking at classic films like The Godfather and lighting and light, it just went against the grain. Like, you know, I was watching a YouTube clip and they, you know, lighting from below. So like basically half the face was like in black. I'm like, it just went against everything, but it creates this really like amazing vibe that's so iconic. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I've been really delving into that world. From a photography standpoint, I think there's some really Australia and New Zealand has some amazing outdoor photographers. Mark Clinton, a New Zealand guy who does a lot of work in action sports like skiing and snowboarding, has really, like, I feel like he's elevated that into a really artistic notion. Like it could be very commercial, because there's a lot of sponsor, but he's really like the way that he uses like Ben Clement, another New Zealand guy who's got a magazine called Good Sport. He does some awesome work with brands. He did some great work with Arc'teryx that was really like different. And then you've got obviously you guys, the group that we have here. Yeah. But you know that's you know externally I look at the work you guys do, but then I get inspired by just having conversations with you, like sitting down with Anastasia, you know, Sarah, and just sort of like talking and getting to know you guys, because then I understand, you know, your work more. And I think that is inspiring because, again, to your point, you from afar, you look at the work and you go, oh, damn, I wish I was doing that. But then you go, actually, I can't do that because that's, you know, Tony's work or that's Tony's personality coming to, and you get, I don't know, it sort of inspires me to lean into my personality more and be confident in that, because you can't, like, it's unique. And I think that's, you know, connecting personally is kind of something that I've gone, you understand that person and that person's work a lot better. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this. Is there anything that came up for you while we were talking that you'd like to say?
So much. I would never listen to this again because I hate the sound of my own voice.
We all do.
But no, I think I don't know, like I think being around you guys and it's sort of, I would encourage anyone that's, you know, whether you've been in the field for 20 years or starting out, is to really be open. And I think that's one of the beauties. We were talking about it, I think the first day I got here, is be open to the field and the community of photographers. Like, it's really easy especially if you work for a big brand and you get contracts to come in, do your job and go away. But I think one of the beauties of, endurance sport and people involved in it is the community. And I would really encourage people to take time to connect, ask questions, and just, look beyond your job as a creative to connect personally. Because I think you in the end, you create really great friendships out of it and connections. It's not just work. It's, we're all trying to get a livelihood from it. And spending time with people, it's kind of nice and refreshing. So you just don't come here and take photos and move away. And I think, I don't know, like I would just encourage people to shoot. That's the beauty of digital this day and age. Just like, I've taken my camera out and some days I'm like, wow, I just did not get a shot. Like, and it won't be of an event or it might just be in nature. I'm like, you know what? It is what it is. And that's the only way you learn is like trial and error. So you develop your own aesthetic. Like, I'm not classically trained. I just pick up the camera and shoot, and you learn. And I think that's the biggest thing is you just shoot. You're going to make mistakes, and that's the only way you're going to grow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting. This was fun.
Thank you very much. Awesome.
That's it. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please reach out to me and tell me what you think. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.